I still remember the first time I saw it. It was late, far too late for anything good to be on TV, but I couldn't sleep. Work had been a grind, and the clock in the corner of the living room said it was already past 2 a.m. The only light came from the flickering TV screen in front of me. I had been mindlessly flipping through channels when the screen went blank. The buzz of static filled the room, like the world itself had gone silent. I sat up, annoyed at first, thinking the cable had gone out, but then something caught my eye. A figure. It was faint at first, just a shadow in the grainy mess of the static. But it was there, a tall, gaunt shape standing in an empty room. It was hard to make out anything more than the outline, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something about it was wrong. There was no sound, just the harsh white noise, and that figure in the corner of the screen. I squinted, leaning forward. The more I looked at it, the clearer the details seemed to become, if only just a little. The shape was tall, unnaturally tall, and its limbs seemed too long for a human. I could barely make out its features, but its eyes. I swear they were looking directly at me. No, not at me, through me. I could feel them, even through the screen. It was only for a few seconds. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the static snapped back into a picture, an old commercial for a car, just like before. I blinked, shaken, and grabbed the remote to change the channel, but the figure was gone. Maybe it was a prank, some bizarre glitch from an old broadcast. I didn't know, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I laughed it off, tried to tell myself it was nothing. The kind of nonsense your mind makes up when you're tired and staring at static too long. But when I checked the clock, something strange hit me. It was 3:15 a.m. The last time I looked at the clock, it had been around 2 a.m. I could have sworn I hadn't been asleep. But there was that lost hour, like it had just vanished into thin air. I shrugged it off. I'd had my fair share of late nights, and who needed sleep anyway? But I couldn't shake that image of the figure standing there, half visible, watching me from the static. Something about it seemed wrong. I told myself it was just a glitch, but the next night, it happened again. The next night, I tried to stay away from the TV. I told myself I'd catch up on some reading, maybe listen to some music, just avoid staring at the screen for hours. But the silence in the house felt overwhelming. The walls seemed to press in around me, and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen felt too loud. The only comfort was the glowing blue light of the TV screen. I gave in around midnight. Maybe I'd just watch one show, I thought. Nothing too long, just something to fill the void. So I turned it on, still haunted by the memory of the figure from the night before. At first, nothing. Just the usual noise, the usual junk TV to fill the space. But then, right around the same time, 2:42 a.m. to be exact, it happened again. Static. Not the random kind, but that same thick, oppressive kind that made your skin crawl. It didn't take long for the figure to return. This time, I didn't move. I couldn't. There it was, standing in that same empty room, half lit in the fuzz. It wasn't a trick of the light. The figure wasn't just a shadow or a distortion. It was real. I could feel it, like the air in the room had shifted, gotten colder. The longer I watched, the clearer it became that this thing, whatever it was, wasn't just part of the glitch. It was aware of me. The eyes, always hidden in the darkness of its face, seemed to focus in on me, piercing through the noise, through the static, through the walls of my apartment. I felt like it could see me sitting there, frozen in place, heart racing. Then the screen cut to black. Just like that. No sound, no warning. The room was empty again, and the TV was nothing but the faint hum of electricity. I reached for the remote, hands shaking, but before I could change the channel, my phone rang. I froze. It wasn't the usual ringtone. It was an old song, one I hadn't heard in years, a lullaby my mother used to sing to me when I was little. I hadn't heard it since I was a kid. I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling. There was no one on the other end, just the sound of soft breathing. Then, the voice. It wasn't mine, but it was familiar. A voice I hadn't heard in years. "Don't look away." I couldn't respond. The voice had no source, no physical presence, but it was unmistakable. I slammed the phone down, my heart hammering in my chest. The silence that followed felt thick, suffocating. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to look at the TV again, but I felt drawn to it. My eyes went back to the screen, and there it was, its outline still lingering, almost like it had been waiting for me to return. It wasn't just in the static now. It was creeping into my life, into my space, like it was trying to break through the veil of the screen and into the real world. I wanted to scream, but my throat closed up. I wanted to run, but my legs were frozen in place. The figure never moved. It just stood there, waiting, watching. And in the silence of the room, I swore I could hear it whisper my name. The days that followed felt different. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The figure, the eyes, the voice. It was like it had invaded my mind, seeped into my every thought, no matter how hard I tried to push it away. I couldn't escape it, not even in sleep. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw it. Those long limbs, that shadowed face, always just out of focus, but somehow clearer than anything else. I tried to tell myself it was just a fluke, a trick of the mind. Maybe it was sleep deprivation, maybe stress from work. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I couldn't ignore it. It didn't help that every night, the same thing happened. I'd sit down in front of the TV, trying to avoid it, trying not to see that figure standing in the static. But it was always there, always waiting for me. Then came the dreams. It started innocently enough, just flashes of images. But soon they became more vivid, more real. I'd find myself in that empty room from the TV. It was dark, damp, and smelled like old wood. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, but I could hear it. The shuffle of its feet on the floor, slow and deliberate, coming closer. I'd feel its presence looming behind me, cold and oppressive, but every time I turned to face it, I couldn't see its face, just its eyes, always in the shadows, staring at me. And when I woke up, I wasn't in my bed. No, I was sitting in front of the TV. The static was on, and there it was, standing in the same spot. Every time I looked away, it moved a little closer. It wasn't just the TV anymore. It was everywhere. It followed me. At work, I'd catch glimpses of it in reflective surfaces, mirrors, windows, the shiny surface of my office desk. Just the outline of it, always watching, always waiting. The feeling of those eyes piercing through the space between us made my skin crawl. I couldn't breathe. Then came the calls. I started getting strange phone calls, just like before. But this time they were different. The voice wasn't saying anything, it just breathed, softly, like it was trying to imitate me. I'd pick up, and there'd be nothing but that breath, followed by the same whisper I'd heard before. "Don't look away." It didn't make sense. How could this thing be inside my head, inside my life like this? I couldn't figure out what was real anymore. Was it just the stress? A breakdown? Or was it something else? Something darker? The night it happened, I was too terrified to sleep. I had to confront it. I couldn't keep living like this, in a haze of terror and confusion. I turned on the TV, determined to face whatever it was, whatever had invaded my life. The static came first, then the figure, standing just like always. But this time I felt something different. The air in the room had changed, as though the space between me and the screen was thinning. The figure wasn't just a shadow anymore. It was closer. I reached for the remote, hands shaking, trying to change the channel, but the button didn't work. The TV flickered, and for a split second, I saw it. The figure's face. It was a blur, just a flash of movement, but I saw enough to know it wasn't human. Its eyes, hollow and endless, stared back at me, and for a moment I thought I saw something else. A mouth. But it wasn't a mouth like a person's. It was wrong, like it didn't belong to anything human. I couldn't look away. I couldn't move. The figure's hand began to rise, reaching toward the screen, as though it were reaching for me. I heard the voice again. This time it was loud. Closer. "Don't look away." I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figure's hand reached further, and just before it touched the screen, the TV shut off. The room was silent. The static was gone. I stood frozen, staring at the black screen. And then, in the reflection of the TV, I saw it again. It wasn't just in the static anymore. It was standing right behind me. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed, staring at the figure behind me. I didn't dare turn around. It was as if the very act of facing it would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. But I had no choice. I had to turn. I had to look. I slowly twisted my body, and there it was. The figure standing in the corner of my apartment. Tall, gaunt, its limbs too long, its face hidden in shadow. It wasn't moving. At least, not yet. It just stood there, as if it were waiting. Watching. I felt the breath leave my body in a rush, and I knew what I had to do. I ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I bolted out of the room, out of my apartment, and into the hallway. But when I reached the door, it was locked. No, wait. It wasn't just locked. The lock was different. It had changed, the mechanism twisting into something that wasn't right. I couldn't explain it. I tried to break the door down, but the moment my hand touched the knob, I heard it. The voice, louder now. "Don't look away." I turned to see the figure standing just inside the apartment doorway, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, everything went black. I don't know how long I've been here, but I'm writing this now, on the only piece of paper I could find. The figure's still watching. I can feel its eyes. I know it's here with me, but I won't look away. Not this time.